Hello everybody, my name is Phoenix Knight and welcome to Pokemon Sword with Eeveelutions only. Now this is pretty much self-explanatory, but for those of you that are a bit confused, I'm going to be playing through Pokemon Sword and it's going to be just using the Eeveelutions only, so only the evolved forms of Eevee and maybe one Eevee on the team just to get the Gigantamax one that you can get if you already have Pokemon Let's Go Eevee save file on your thing. But yeah, let's go, shall we? So after starting up the game and doing the tutorial, we get given our Pokedex and get shown what the Pokemon Center is by Hop, where I can pick up my first two Pokemon for this run, Greed and Wrath. Lee gives us a load of Pokeballs. We meet Professor Magnolia, and after that Hop challenges us to a Pokemon battle. So of course his first Pokemon is Wooloo, and when we send out our Eevee, Greed, who you'll notice is level 20 and is a bit over leveled for this fight because I accidentally leveled him up a bit in Scarlet before I transferred him. So yeah, a couple of tackles later, and Hop is easily beaten. Sorry buddy, next time I won't use my over leveled peeps against you. We pick up our Gigantamax Eevee from this guy here, who I name Pride. We get introduced to the wild area, but because there's no Pokemon that we need throughout here, we're not going to be doing anything with it this time. So after making our way to Motorstoke and me putting a number of my favourite Pokemon on my jacket, we get a look at all the gym trainers, and we make our way into the stadium for the first time. And after all that, of course, Hops wants another Pokemon battle. Take down Hops' team very quickly. So after doing some more bits and making it through Galar Mine, we run into Pokemon Trainer Bede, who of course wants a battle with us. So of course this cocky guy sends out a Solosis first, and I send out Wrath. And of course unfortunately, we don't have any Dark type moves, so of course we might just have to tackle our way through this. So of course I go with Tackle first, knocking Solosis down into half. Solosis goes for Endeavour, which of course makes it that I have the same health as Solosis, but one more tackle takes him out. So after that, Bede's next Pokemon is his Gothita, so of course we'll go with the same strategy again of tackling him, but after which he uses Tickle, which lowers Wrath's attack and defense by 1 step, so I decide to swap into Pride, and as I do that the Gothita goes for Psybeam, which doesn't really do much to him. So I go for Baby Doll Eyes, lowering Gothita's attack, and Gothita is competitive, which raises her special attack sharply, before she goes for another Tickle on Pride, lowering his attack and defense 1 step, but a few quick attacks later, we manage to take her down with Wrath. So of course the next Pokemon is the level 16 Hatenna, so I just do the same thing again, and a few quick attacks later, he goes down. So now that we've beaten Bede, we make our way onto Route 4 where we can actually start catching some wild Eevees. So, after running around for about 20 minutes and realising that Eevee is way harder to find in Pokemon Sword than in Shield, after Hop tells us about the gym, we go to the Pokemon Center and we can have our pick of either Sloth, Gluttony or Envy, but for now I decided to take out Envy to help with any water types that we have trouble with. So then after doing a light bit of farming, we face off against the first gym leader, Milo, who sent out his Gossifleur, and of course we send out Wrath, but unfortunately though Wrath doesn't have any fire moves for now, but luckily level 20 he does learn Smog, which is still super effective against Milo's Pokemon, so he knocks Gossifleur to about half. She uses Rapid Spin, which raises the Gossifleur's speed up. So this time I decide to go for a quick attack to knock him down into the red. The Gossifleur used Round, which doesn't really do that much to Wrath. So for my third turn I decide to go for a tackle, knocking the Gossifleur down. And of course the last Pokemon is Eldegoss, who I know is going to Dynamax on his first turn using her. So I'm going to go for a Smog. But not before the Gossifleur goes for a Max Overgrowth, which of course still doesn't really do that much to Wrath, but it does set up the grassy terrain, which means that everyone taking the floor heals each turn. So go for another Smog again. It doesn't really do that much to Eldegoss, but it does manage to poison him, which will do chip damage every turn now. And he just goes for another max overgrowth, knocking Wrath into the yellow now, before getting hurt by the poison. So I decide to use this turn to swap out Wrath into Pride. And as I do that, it goes for another max overgrowth, which absolutely devastates Pride's health and leaves them on 2 health this time. And on this turn, Eldegoss goes back to normal size. So I decide to use an energy powder on Pride, healing it back up to full. Eldegoss uses Round, which doesn't do that much to Pride, before we both heal up thanks to grassy terrain. I decide to go for the Gigantamax. And then I go for G-Max Cuddle, knocking Eldegoss into red. He goes for Magical Leaf on Pride though, which doesn't do too much, but we do both still heal thanks to the grassy terrain still being out. Eldegoss gets hit by the poison a bit more, just as the grassy terrain wears off. So I decide to go for another G-Max Cuddle, knocking her down. Our adorably huge Eevee goes back to normal size. And that is our first gym badge against Milo. So after a good strong handshake, and us actually receiving the badge, we get a Magical Leaf, which will be handy when we get a Leafeon eventually. And after healing up, we go through Route 5. Team Yell wants to steal a bike, and afterwards Hop wants to challenge us to another battle. And the first Pokemon he sends out is his Wooloo. And of course we start off with Wrath. And I started off with a sand attack to lower the Wooloo's accuracy by 1 step. And he starts off with a defense curl to raise his defense a bit more. That's why I switch out from Wrath to Envy, because we don't really have anything to hit him with. And the Wooloo switches up to Double Kick, which doesn't really do too much to Envy. So I go for a Pin Missile, which hits the Wooloo 5 times and knocks him down to half. Wooloo follows up with a Tackle, which doesn't do too much to Envy. So I just follow up with another Pin Missile that hits for 3, knocking him into the yellow. So Wooloo just goes for another defense curl, raising his defense 1 more step. So I decide to go for a Quick Attack now, leaving the Wooloo into the red, just before he uses Double Kick, knocking Envy into the yellow. And then Hop uses a Super Potion, restoring all of Wooloo's health. So I decide to go for another Pin Missile, which hits for 3 times, not doing too much to Wooloo. But eventually, we do manage to take the Wooloo down. So I decide to switch up to Greed this time, as Hop sends out his Raboot. He uses Double Kick, which of course does quite a bit to Greed, leaving him into the yellow. So I start off with a newly learned Bite, which doesn't do too much to Raboot unfortunately, and because we know that he's faster than us, I switch into Pride now, as the Raboot goes for a Growl, lowering our attack by 1 step. So I retaliate with a Baby Doll Eyes, lowering the Raboot's attack as well. As he now goes for a Flame Charge, to do not that much to Greed, so I just continue using Baby Doll Eyes and Quick Attacks. So a few Quick Attacks later and the Raboot goes down. So now Hop sends in his Corvisquire, but a few Quick Attacks later, and his Corvisquire goes down. Sorry Hop, maybe next time. After going back to heal, we'll make our way to Hullberry. So after finding the second gym leader, make our way into the gym to do some light puzzle solving. And after that we fight against gym leader Nessa, who starts off with her Goldeen. And we start off with Envy. And the first move we're going to use is Pin Missile. Which only hits 2 times, it doesn't really do that much. So the opposing Goldeen follows up with Agility, to raise her Evasiveness, Speed sharply. Just before we can push off a Thunder Wave, she uses Horn Attack, which is a critical hit. Luckily the Thunder Wave hits, so now the Goldie's paralysed. So I switch out Pride, as Goldie goes to another Agility to raise her speed again. So before it could do Swift, he goes for another Horn Attack, The swift hits take your Goldie down into the yellow. So go for another one, but the Goldie's fully paralysed. Oof, so Swift nearly takes her out. One more quick attack. And she's down. And this next Pokemon is Arrokuda. How we use quick attack on just to judge how much damage you do to him, but it nearly does about half. The Arrokuda uses Aqua Jet on Pride though, not really doing too much damage. So we just keep on using quick attack until the Arrokuda goes down. And now she's on to her last Pokemon, Dreadnought. So Nessa goes for the Dynamax before quick attack hits for a bit of chip damage. Before the Dreadnought goes for Max Geyser on Pride. Not surprisingly taking her out. Sending Envy. And Dreadnought goes for Max Darkness this time. Sending Envy down to 5 health. And lowering his special defense. So we go for a Thunder Wave, which leaves the Dynamax Dreadnought paralysed. So before Envy's taken down, I go for another quick attack. But the Dreadnought's paralysed. But luckily after this turn it goes back to normal size again. So I decide to use a Revive on Pride. As the Dreadnought uses Razor Shell on Envy. Knocking him down now. That comes back out. We Gigantamax him. Use one. But unfortunately straight away Eevee's taken down by a Razor Shell, which critically hits before the rain stops. So we're sending Greed again to use Bite. Doesn't really do that much damage to Dreadnought though, but it does flinch him. So we'll go for another Bite to do a bit more damage. But the Dreadnought's stopped by Paralysis. So we just keep on using Bite. Dreadnought is finally down. And that means that we get our second gym badge from Nessa. So after a quick handshake and our water badge collected, so now we go to the Pokemon Center, put Gluttony into the team. We find Gym Leader Kabu. Then have to get it back to Motorstoke. As soon as we go to the hotel, Marnie wants to battle us, so we do, and her first Pokemon that she brings out is a Croagunk. And of course we lead with Wrath. And the first move we go for is Tackle. Just to do a bit of chip damage, but it does about half. The Croagunk uses Revenge on Wrath, which does nearly half as well. So I just go for another Tackle to take the Croagunk down. So I decide to switch into Gluttony, as Marnie sent in her Scraggy. Remember Gluttony, I decide to go for Whirlpool on Scraggy to trap him in the Vortex and to do chip damage over time. And of course that's a critical hit, so it knocks him down into the yellow. Scraggy uses Low Kick, which doesn't really do that much to Gluttony. She gets hit in the Whirlpool again. So now we go for another Tackle. Taking the Scraggy down into the red. She uses Low Kick again, which again doesn't do much. The Scraggy gets hit by Whirlpool. Just before Marnie uses a Super Potion on her to full heal over again. Gluttony goes for Water Pulse, which takes Scraggy all the way down, nearly into the red this time. But because of Whirlpool, Scraggy does go into the red. So then one more Water Pulse knocks her out. So now Marnie's down to her last Pokemon, who is Morpeko, so I switch into Envy. And she brings her out. So I decide to go for a double kick on the little rodent, which takes him down to nearly half health. She decides to go for Bite on Envy, which takes him down into the halfway point, just before the Morpeko changes into Hangry mode. But we just go for another double kick to take Morpeko down into the red now. And Morpeko goes for Bite on Envy, knocking him into the red. She transforms back into her usual self. And just as I try to go for a tackle, she goes for quick attack, knocking Envy down. So after she goes angry again, I decide to send in Pride and go for a quick attack of my own, knocking her out and winning the battle against Marnie. So the next day we go back into the gym. We do the gym challenge, which involves catching Pokemon. And after doing that, we get our battle with our third gym leader, Carbu. And he leaves off with the Ninetales. So of course we lead off with Gluttony. And now I know she's going to go for Will-O-Wisp, so I'm going to start her with Whirlpool. But not before Ninetales does her move to burn Gluttony. And when we do hit Ninetales, it leads her down into the yellow. And she gets trapped in the vortex. But unfortunately, though, Gluttony's health does get cut in half. Ninetales uses Quick Attack to not really do much to Gluttony. And Gluttony leads off that with a Water Pulse to take down the fiery Eevee. And then Carbu sends out his second Pokemon, Arcanine, who of course has Intimidate, so it cuts Gluttony's attack even more. And so we're just going to lead off with Water Pulse here, but not before Arcanine uses a Bite on Gluttony, chipping him down even more. Luckily though, Water Pulse hits and one-shots the Arcanine. Oof, good job Gluttony. And now Carbu leads with his strongest Pokemon, Cinder Scorch, who I know is going to go for Gigantamax. That's why I use a full heal on Gluttony, just before his Cinder Scorch goes big. And uses Max Flutterby on Gluttony to knock her down into the red and lowering her special attack. So we'll switch it to Wrath, and Cinder Scorch goes for another Max Flutterby, which takes Wrath down by just over a third, and to drop his special attack now. But luckily though, Wrath is a physical attacker, so we use a Bite, chipping Cinder Scorch down. He goes for a third Max Flutterby just before he goes down to normal size. So we go for another Bite on the Cinder Scorch, this time doing a bit more damage. Cinder Scorch goes for Bug Bite though, leaving Wrath on 2 health, so I switch him out into Envy. And Carbu Cinder Scorch goes for another Bug Bite, which leaves Envy in the yellow. So I decide to go for a Tackle to chip the Cinder Scorch down a bit, but unfortunately though, Envy does get hit by another strong Bug Bite to knock him out. So this time I swap back to Gluttony, just before I use a Super Potion on her to get her up to health a bit. Cinder Scorch just goes for another Bug Bite, which doesn't do too much on Gluttony, but it does crit, leaving her down into the yellow. So this time I decide to make Gluttony big, and one Max Geyser later, and the Cinder Scorch is finally taken down. And that's the gym leader Carbu down. So then after getting our third gym badge, we move Greed into the party now. So after me and Hop are seen off by the 3 gym leaders, and after proving we have all 3 badges, we're allowed in. We have a look around the city, heal everyone up. And after doing quite a bit of talking around Hammerlock, we talk to Sonia, do some plot. And after doing quite a bit of travelling through Route 6, and after we get to Stow Side, we finally make it into the 4th gym. And after doing the gym challenge, we face off against gym leader B this time, instead of Alistair. And she starts off with a Hypnon top. So we start off with Greed, our Espeon. And while Hypnotom's dancing, I decide to go for Confusion with Greed, which just managed to hit and send them into the yellow. So afterwards, Hypnotom goes for Revenge, which takes Espeon down to about half. So I just go for another Confusion, and the dancing Pokemon is taken down. And the next Pokemon is Pangoro. And because it's part dark, I switch out Espeon into Envy. And switch out. Just after I switch out, I use a Night Slash because that's super effective against Wrath, so it's a good job I did. Switch. And just after that, I decide to go for Pin Missile just to see how much damage it does, and it does hardly anything to Pangoro. So of course he finishes Envy off with a Night Slash, unfortunately. So that's when I bring out Wrath. And a couple of Fire Fangs later, Pangoro goes down to a burn. Now B's next Pokemon is Surfetched, so I decide to go for Smog, this time to see if I could poison him, but it doesn't work, so Surfetch just uses Revenge to knock Wrath out. So now I'm going to switch back into Greed. Unlock Confusion later. Surfetch goes down after I switched into Gluttony. And now she ends up with her last Pokemon, Machamp, who we know she's going to Gigantamax. So I use a Revive on Envy. And the first thing that Gigantamax Machamp uses is Max Chi Strike, which of course raises his attack and gets him popped, and leaves Gluttony in the yellow. Revive on Greed, just before he goes for another Max Chi Strike, knocking Gluttony out. So I send in Greed again. And one Max Mindstorm later. There's a critical hit on top of that. The Machamp finally goes down. And that's a Gym Leader B beaten. So after a good old handshake with B holding her shoulder as though she's hurt it. And we get given TM42 Revenge by this guy. And our fighting uniform. We've come across B wanted to destroy this mural. So of course to stop him doing that, he wants us to battle him. And his first Pokemon is Duosion. So I lead with Wrath this time. Start off with giving Duosion a good bite, which one-shots him. So that's his first Pokemon down. The Speed now sends in his Gothorita. Go for another bite with Wrath, which takes her down into the red. So of course her move now is Rock Tomb, which doesn't really do too much to Wrath, but it does lower his speed by 1 step. So I just go for another bite on the Gothorita, but of course Speed uses a Super Potion before I can do that. Fully heal Gothorita. Down to another bite. Decide to keep him rapidly, puts in his Galarian Ponyta. He uses Psybeam first, which does hardly anything to Wrath, but it does send him down into the yellow. So I follow up with a bite, which does quite a bit of damage and knocks out the Ponyta. So now Beat sends in, I think, his last Pokemon, Hatterene. He uses Psybeam on Wrath again, which takes him down into the red, but I go for a Smog this time, trying to go for the poison, and we do manage to poison her. So now each turn she'll take a bit of chip damage. Wrath, as Hatterene just goes for another Psybeam to do a bit more to him. Trim goes down, and Wrath being the MVP, and Bede is beaten. Sorry buddy, try not to destroy murals in the future. So after Bede makes that face, the wall nearly crushes Sonia, but reveals on a shield statue, after hearing some more about the plot. And then getting ready for future gym, I swap in Pride for Sloth. We make our way through Glimwood Tangle. We enter Ballonlea. And after having a wander around, we have a go into the gym. And after battling a load of trainers and answering some questions. And afterwards we get to battle against Gym Leader Opal. And the first thing she sends out is a Galarian Weezing. And we go and send out Wrath first. And the first move I'm going to use is Smog, which does hit. And it doesn't really do that much to Galarian Weezing, but it is a critical hit though. And now he uses Sludge on Wrath. Again, doesn't do too much, but unfortunately Wrath is poisoned by that. Oh, and then we get a first question from Opal. Do you know my nickname? The Wizard. Ding ding ding, congratulations, you're correct. And of course, because we got a question correct, Wrath's speed rose sharply. So now I'm going to go for another Smog on the Galarian Weezing. Because it is still part Fairy. Now that does slightly more, but still doesn't poison her. And again, she goes for another Sludge on Wrath, which doesn't do too much now, but it does send him into the yellow. And with that poison damage, that's a bit risky. So now we go for a Fire Fang on the Weezing. And she left into the reds this time. And of course, she goes for another Sludge, leaving Wrath on the red. We get poisoned a little bit. But after one tackle, the Galarian Weezing is finally taken down. But unfortunately, because of the poison damage, Wrath faints as well. So I'm going to go for Greed now. As Opal sends out her Mawile, a Steel and Fairy type. And Mawile has Intimidate, which cuts attack. But luckily though, Greed is a special attacker. And of course we get another question. What is Opal's favourite colour? And of course the obvious answer, purple. Yes, a nice deep purple. Truly grand, don't you think? And that rises Guile's defense and special defense, which is going to be handy. So we go for a newly learned Psychic. And the Mawile sending her down into the yellow. But the Mawile just goes for Iron Defense, which raises physical defense by 2 steps. So one more Psychic. And the Mawile faints. So next she sends in her Togekiss, which is Fairy and Flying. So the first move we do on it is Psychic, which takes it down to nearly half. The Togekiss goes for an Air Slash on Greed that does hardly anything to him. So we just go for another Psychic. And she's knocked into the red. So of course she goes for another Air Slash, rinsing and repeating. But again, it doesn't do too much. But then, alrighty then, how old am I? The correct answer, of course, is 88 years old. Oh, well, you're not wrong, but you could have been more sensitive. Okay, then never mind. The correct answer is 16. Even though, yes. But because that doesn't really affect us too much, one more Psychic on the Togekiss takes her down. Now our last Pokemon is going to be Alcremie. And we know that she's going to Gigantamax, so I just go for another Psychic. And we managed to hit the Alcremie first, lowering her special defense. Just before the Gigantamax, Alcremie goes for G-Max Finale. But she does heal a little bit from it. So I decide to switch it up and go for Dazzling Gleam, just see how much it does. And of course hardly anything, but the Gigantamax Alcremie just goes for G-Max Finale again, doing slightly more to Greed this time. So this turn I decide to revive Wrath, as again she just rinse and repeats and go for another G-Max Finale. Oh, knocking Green into the red, but because that's 3 turns done, the G-Max Alcremie goes back to normal. I switch back into Wrath. But Alcremie goes for Draining Kiss, which again does hardly anything to Wrath. So I decide to go big. And one Max Ooze later, and the Alcremie gets taken out. And that's the gym leader Opal beaten. So then after a hearty handshake from Opal, we get our 5th gym badge. And of course afterwards I decide to switch Envy into Lust now. And after doing so, we're back in Hammerlock, where we bump into Bede again. Opal says he's perfect for her gym. We make our way through Route 7, and as soon as we make it through, the Hob wants to have another battle with us. So we oblige, of course. And his first Pokemon is Trevenant. So we lead with Wrath, of course. And so, of course, the first move we have Wrath do is Fire Fang, which one hits Trevenant. And now the next Pokemon is the bulky Snorlax. So I decide to go for Smog to try to poison him, which works, luckily. So that'll do him a bit of jib damage every turn. So the first thing Snorlax does is Body Slam on Wrath, which takes him down to nearly half health, but of course he gets poisoned. Unfortunately, it's not burned now, otherwise that will halve Snorlax's physical attack. So now you're poisoned. This time we go for Fire Fang for some good old stab damage to take Snorlax nearly half again. He goes for another Body Slam, leaving Wrath on 12 health and paralysed. But the bit of poison damage does chip him down to below half health into the yellow. So I decide to swap Wrath in. Descending Greed now. And of course he just keeps a go for Body Slam. So we go for Dazzling Gleam on him, just to chip him down a bit more. And of course instead of going for a Body Slam, which might knock Greed out, he goes for Stockpile 1, which of course raises his physical defense. But he is still poisoned, and the poison is just about to knock him down. So bye bye Snorlax. And Hop's next Pokemon is his Bolt Hunt. So of course I decide to keep in Greed and go for a Psychic, which takes Bolt Hunt all the way down to 0 health again, knocking him out in one shot. So now that he wants to send in his Heat more, so we switch Greed in to Gluttony just before he comes out. And Gluttony just learned a new move, so we decide to use it, being Muddy Water, which again one-shots the Heat more. Sorry buddy, you just came out, but hey ho. And now it's time for Hop's final Pokemon, being Cinderace, who's probably going to go for Pyro Ball, so of course I'll go for Muddy Water. And he surprised me with his first move banging Acrobatics, who of course outspeeds Gluttony, but luckily though we do manage to hit him with a Muddy Water. And luckily for us that knocks him down. And that means that we beat Hop. Sorry buddy, maybe in the next fight. And after Route 8, and after going through the snowy half of Route 8, and we make our way into Sirchester. And after healing up my team, I go into the next gym. And then after completing the gym challenge, we face up against gym leader Gordy. And his first Pokemon is going to be Barbaracle. And of course we're going to start it with Gluttony, our Vapor. And the first move that we're going to use in Muddy Water, but Barbaracle avoids it, so of course we get Rock Tombed, which doesn't do too much to Gluttony, but it does lower Gluttony's speed, which is a bit annoying. And then he uses Ciel Scash, because he's faster than Gluttony, which lowers Barbaracle's defense and special defense, but it does raise his attack sharply, and special attack sharply, and speed. And I didn't really realise it raised his speed, but yeah, finally gets even Muddy Water to knock him out in one shot. Yeah, he didn't really last that long after all that, so Gordy's second Pokemon is Shuckle. So now we're going to use Aurora Beam, which does hardly anything to Shuckle, as he goes for another Rock Tomb on Gluttony, which of course doesn't do much, but it does lower Gluttony's speed a bit. So this time I decide to see how much Muddy Water does on the Shuckle. And it takes him down from a sliver to, well, almost one-shotting him. And Gordy's third one is Stonjourner. Now, of course, the thing about Stonjourner's stats are that a gust of wind could knock him out. You know, his physical defense is fine, but his special defense is almost non-existent. I think it's 10. So before we can do Ice Beam, he goes for Stealth Rock, meaning that if we swap out Pokemon, that they're going to get hit by them. And so of course Gluttony goes for an Ice Beam. Oh, and Stonjourner actually lives, but he's only in the yellow now. So of course Stonjourner goes for Wonder Room. Just before we do another Aurora Beam, which takes Stonjourner down into red. As he goes for Body Slam on Gluttony, doing again not that much damage, but it does paralyse her. So I tried to go for a tackle, but of course Stonjourner goes for another Body Slam on our Water Cat, finally bringing her down into the yellow, but of course Gluttony's fully paralysed still. So finally, after another turn of him using Body Slam, I managed to get a tackle off on Stonjourner, and he goes crumbling down. He sends out his last Pokemon, Colossal. And because I know he's going to go for his Gigantamax, I heal up Gluttony with a Hyper Potion first. And he goes big. He goes for a G-Max Volcolith. And Gluttony, which again does hardly any damage despite him being Gigantamaxed. But it does mean that Gluttony does get chip damage by all the rocks. So I decided to use another Hyper Potion on Gluttony while I have the chance. The Sargento goes for another G-Max Volcolith. And upon Water Cap, doing about the same amount of damage. And again, chipped by the rocks. And he goes for one more Volcolith. And because I know that he's 4 times weak to water, 1 Max Geyser later. Takes him from full to nothing. And after he explodes, means that we've beaten Gordy and get our next gym badge. So after getting a very tight handshake, we finally get our next gym badge, the Rock Badge. Now that we've done that, and we talk to Sonia, and after meeting everyone at a restaurant, and of course after that Hop wants to have a battle with us, so we oblige of course, and his first Pokemon he sends out is Dubwool. So of course we lead with Gluttony because I haven't swapped anyone in and out yet. And Dubwool's first move on Gluttony's Takedown, which is a critical hit but still doesn't do that much. And luckily for us it doesn't paralyse. And of course so I go for Aurora Beam on him. I just send him down into the yellow. And we both get chipped down by Hail. The Hop goes for another takedown on Gluttony, sending her down into the yellow this time. But again, Dubwool gets hit by Recoil, and luckily the Gluttony doesn't get paralysed. And of course we both get hit by Hail again. And of course because it's hailing I decided to swap into Sloth now. So then we don't keep getting chipped down every turn. And as soon as I swap out, Hop goes for Defense Curl with Dubwool, raising his physical defense. And of course he gets chipped down by the Hail, but because Sloth is an Ice type, he does not. Oof. And of course Sloth goes for a Hyper Potion on his Dubwool, just in case. And I have Sloth go for Bite, which of course doesn't do that much to Dubwool, but it just to start to chip him down a bit. And of course I thought I was being smart, but because this is going to take a while, I just send a Greed now because Dubwool keeps raising his physical defense. So a couple of Psychics later, and after getting chipped by Hail, Dubwool goes down. And the next Pokemon the Hop sends out is his Snorlax. So I decide to go for a Psychic with Greed. And that chips Snorlax down nicely. But he decides to go for a Crunch on Greed, which of course is super effective. And it knocks him down into the yellow. Just before we both get chipped down by Hail. So because now I know he's got Bite, I decided to swap out Greed into Wrath. And of course just after that he goes for another Crunch, which doesn't do that much to Wrath. But of course oddly enough we'd still both get chipped by Hail, even though I thought Fire types couldn't really be done that because it makes sense. But anyway, I go for Fire Fang on Snorlax. It doesn't really do too much, but we are whittling him down slowly but surely. And of course he goes for another Body Slam. So we just go for another Fire Fang, burning the Snorlax in the process. As he just goes for a third Body Slam in a row on Wrath, knocking him to 7 health. But because of the Hail we unfortunately faint. Also a blessing in disguise, because of the Hail Snorlax faints too. And again I decide to swap in Sloth as he sends in his Corviknight. So again we have to be careful here because Corviknight is strong against Sloth. But I decide to see how much this does and go for Ice Shard, which does hardly anything. As the Corviknight goes for Drill Peck, not really taking down too much of Sloth's health. So after quite a few turns of us going back and forth like this, Corviknight kept up with the Scary Face to lower speed, so I swapped into Gluttony to use the Muddy Water just to see how much damage that does to the Corviknight. And of course that's enough to knock him out. And after all that is our next Pokemon is Pincurchin, which Gluttony does have to be careful of. So I swap out Gluttony into Greed. And just after that, Pincurchin goes for Spark, which unfortunately does not Greed out. But in the meantime, she does get buffeted by Hail. So now after that, I decide to go for Guile now. So we do want to try and evolve into a Umbreon. So of course, when I send him out, I go for Bite, which doesn't do much. And the Pincurchin goes for Curse, which is an interesting choice. And because it lowers his speed, but raises her attack just before we both get buffeted by the hail again. So this time with Guile, I decide to go for takedown myself, knocking her into the yellow, and of course he is hit by recoil. But Hop just goes for another curse again to lower his speed but raise his defences. So after a couple more takedowns, if we switch it to Lust now, and I decide to use her to go for Swift to knock the pink urchin down, finally, because we do have to be careful now as he sends out his last Pokemon, Cinderace, who can hit really hard with Pyro Ball. So now I decide to use a Hyper Potion on Gluttony in the back to make sure that we're actually ready for the rabbit. And yep, Cinderace goes for his cool looking Pyro Ball, which they totally did dirty in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet because it doesn't look as cool now. But unfortunately though, Lust is knocked down, so we do have to switch into Gluttony now, who's ready for him. But this time he strangely decides to go for Mega Kick, which does hardly anything, so we retaliate with a Muddy Water to take him down. So that means that we're beating Pokemon Trainer Hop again. Sorry buddy. So then I have to go into Heal. Then after Guile evolves into Umbreon finally, after we grind in the wild area at night time. And after exiting Searchester and making our way all the way through Route 9. And then after coming all the way here on our water bike, we make it all the way to Route 9 into Outer Spikemuth now. Where we see the place has been locked down, so we need to find an alternate route. And after a couple of fights through the grass, Molly wants us to have a battle with her, so of course we oblige. And her first Pokemon is Liepard. So we send out Lust, who's unfortunately probably on a bit of low health because I've been trying to level her up to try and get her into Sylveon. So yeah. So yeah, Liepard first of all goes for Torment, which means that we can't use the same move twice. So Lust goes for Baby Doll Eyes to lower Liepard's attack by 1 step. And just after that, Liepard goes for Sucker Punch, nearly putting Lust down into the red, but I go for a tackle with her. I'm not really doing that much to Liepard, but it's still a bit of damage. So I decide to swap into Gluttony, as Liepard goes for Nasty Plot, raising both her attack and special attack if I remember correctly. And of course, before we can move, she goes for a Sucker Punch again, not doing anything to Gluttony, so we go for a Hyper to take down the Liepard. And our next Pokemon is Morpeko, so I decide to go for an Aurora Beam. The first move she uses Spark, sending Gluttony down into the yellow, and unfortunately paralysing her. And yet Gluttony's fully paralysed, so of course we can't do Aurora Beam. Just as Morpeko goes into Hangry Mode. So again I try for another one as Morpeko goes for Torment. And luckily this time Aurora Beam does hit the Morpeko, leaving her on about half and sending her back into normal mode. Morpeko goes for another Spark, leaving Gluttony on 24 health. But Morpeko avoids Hydro Pump, unfortunately sending him back into Hangry Mode. So this time I swap out Gluttony to sending out other blue Eeveelution, Sloth, as Morpeko goes for another Spark. But after one more Spark, I decide to go to Freeze Dry, which of course knocks the Morpeko out, thankfully. And next up she sends up her Scrafty, so I just go for another Freeze Dry on her to send her into the yellow. And of course she uses Drake Break on Sloth, unfortunately knocking her out. So now I decide to go for a kind of risky move and send in the newly evolved Guile, as I go for a Bite, doing hardly anything to Scrafty, but it does knock her closer to being knocked out. As she goes for Scary Face on Guile, lowering his speed harshly, as she just keeps on using Scary Faces, and I keep on using Sand Attacks. I swap into Greed after a few more turns, as the Scrafty goes for Swagger this time, and Greed decides to actually hit with the Dazzling Gleam this time, sending Scrafty finally down. Armani's last Pokemon is Toxicroak, who of course is quad weak to Psychic, so after he uses Sucker Punch was hit really hard. One Psychic later, and the Toxicroak goes down. Armani is beaten. Sorry, maybe next time. And after coming into Spikebuth fighting a load of Team Yell Grunts, we finally get introduced to the next gym leader, Piers. And after he tells everyone else to get out of the vicinity, we finally have our Pokemon battle against him. And his first Pokemon that he sends out is Scrafty. And of course I do a decidedly risky thing and lead with Greed. And Scrappy has Intimidate, which lowers Greed's physical attack by 1 step, but that's fine because she's a space attacker. So of course the first thing we go for is that Dazzling Gleam, which of course one-shots the Scrafty. And now Pierce's next Pokemon is his Malamar. So again we go for another Dazzling Gleam on the Squid. And it leaves him on the yellow, but Malamar goes for payback, knocking Greed out in 1 hit, unfortunately. Sorry, buddy. So because it hits hard, I decided to send a Gluttony and 1 Hydro Pump later. The Malamar goes down. Now Pierce's ace Pokemon is Obstagoon, who goes for Throat Chop, which of course doesn't do too much Gluttony, but it does mean that we can't use any sound moves now. But luckily though, we decided to go for Hydro Pump, which sends Obstagoon all the way down into the yellow, and Obstagoon goes for another Throat Chop, which again leaves Gluttony on about half HP, but with 1 Aurora Beam later. And thankfully Obstagoon's obstacle doesn't hit because we didn't go for any physical moves, and he is down. Now it's time for Pierce's more pain in the butt Pokemon, Skuntank, who is both poison and dark type, so is only weak to ground. So I decided to go for another Hydro Pump, and luckily it does go through. They're taking the Skuntank down. Ooh! In 1 hit. I did not expect that. Thank you, Gluttony. And with that is Gym Leader Pierce taken down. I thought he had 1 more Pokemon left, buddy. Sorry. And after a cool handshake from our favourite gym leader in this game, we got ourselves on the next gym badge, which is the Dark one. And after heading out to Spikemuth, we hear an explosion. And of course Leon's there to oversee it. So then after we head in this tunnel, we hear from Hobbs that Leon has made it in the newspaper already, sorting out some Dynamax Pokemon that went rogue. So then after nipping over this bridge and doing a few more fights, we make our way all the way back to Hammerlock, catch up with everyone for a chat, we heal up our team, and then we finally head in to take on the last gym challenge. Lust finally decides to evolve into Sylveon, which is great because we're just about to come up against the Dragon gym leader. And after fighting another one of his gym trainers as a challenge, here we are, the last gym leader, Raihan. And of course he sends out 2 Pokemon this time, Gigalith and Flygon. And of course he has kind of a weather team as well, but I send out Gluttony and Sloth first. And yet Gigalith has Sandstream to whip up a Sandstorm, but that's perfect for his side of the field. And to be fair, yeah, you'll notice here that Raihan is known as the Dragon type gym leader, but he's more ground type in this battle. But yeah, first of all I go for an Aurora Beam on Flygon, and then I'm going to try a Freeze Dry on Gigalith. But of course Gluttony gets hit first with Flygon, but Gluttony retaliates with a Aurora Beam, of course one-shotting the Flygon because he is Dragon and ground type. And Sloth manages to get a Freeze Dry on the Gigalith. Of course, not really doing too much to it, but we get the freeze! So that means the Gigalith can't do anything for a few turns, at least. And yeah, after we get buffeted by the Sandstorm each, his next Pokemon is Sandaconda, which is probably going to go for a Glare to paralyse one of us. Yeah, so Gluttony just goes for Gigalith with Hydro Pump. Even though it's frozen and not an issue, it's still good to get him out of the field. So yep, after that he faints. And Sloth goes for a Freeze Dry on the Sandaconda to take it out in 1 shot, of course. And after getting hit with Sandstorm again, he now sends in his ace, Duraludon, which of course I know is going to Gigantamax. So we'll go for a Hydro Pump with Gluttony. And of course after this Duraludon Gigantamaxes, he goes for Max Steel Spike, and this is probably going to be on Sloth. Yep, yes it is. And unfortunately, Steel is good against Ice, so Sloth goes down. But that does mean that Gluttony could get to a Hydro Pump, leaving Duraludon at about half health. So I decide to send in Wrath now. So just after that, Duraludon decides to go for Max Rockfall on, of course, Wrath, which leaves him on 19 health from full. But we do manage to hit with an Aurora Beam from Gluttony and a good old Flare Blitz from Wrath. blowing him up. But unfortunately, because of recall damage, I was going to say the Wrath goes down, but no, he doesn't. He's left on 2 HP. And after that, that's right hand beaten. Sorry, buddy. I know you wanted to look good for social media. And after a jolly good handshake from the huge gym trainer, we got our last and final badge, the Dragonhorn. My god, he is huge. After doing a bit of talking and see that Sonia had been promoted to Professor, then one quick train ride later, and after fighting our way through Route 10, we'll make it all the way to Windon, where after quite a bit of looking round, we go up the steps and make our way into the stadium. We make our way into the semi-finals stadium, and it looks like our first opponent is Marnie again. So of course she leads off with her Lipard, and we start off with Wrath. And the first move that her Lipard uses is Torment. And Wrath, which again means that we can't use the same moves twice in a row, but I go for Flare Blitz, one-shotting her. And just before her second Pokemon, I decided to switch it to Lust finally, as Marnie sends it her Scrafty, who of course is Cord weak to Fairy. So one Moonblast later, and the Scrafty goes down. And now I decide to switch out from Lust into Greed, because Marnie's next Pokemon is Toxicroak, who's again quad weak to Psychic. So after Greed uses one Psychic, she also goes down. So now I decide to keep in Greed as she sends in her last Pokemon, Morpeko. And because it's by a Dark type, I go for Dazzling Gleam, but she also one-shots her. Now of course Marnie sends out a Pokemon that she didn't use before, Grimace, who is part Dark and part Fairy. Now I know that she's going to Gigantamax him, so I go for a Dazzling Gleam. Greed does manage to hit faster and knocks Grimace down to about half. And she goes for G-Max Snooze first of all, which is of course a Dark move, which unfortunately knocks Greed out. So I decide to do the smarter thing and send out Lust, who is faster again and uses Moonblast. And then one explosion later, we've beaten Marnie in the semi-finals. And our second opponent is of course Hop, who sends out his double first with his fancy new throw. And of course we start off with Wrath, and double starts off with Cotton Guard, which raises his defense. When it doesn't quite knock out the sheep. And typically Hop goes for full restore just as double has a slither of health left. So I decided to go with Tackle just because it did. Double goes for another Body Slam. And I decided to go for a Smog this time, but double avoids it. So now I decide to send back Wrath, send in Gluttony, and a Hydro Pump later. And double is down. So after that performance I just send a switch in Gluttony for Sloth, as Hop sends in his Pink Urchin, as way of Sloth to Freeze Dry on Pink Urchin, which nearly one-shots her, and it was a critical hit, and we managed to get to freeze on Pink Urchin as well. Blimey, Freeze Dry is actually coming in. So of course we decided to go for a Bite to finish her off. Thankfully Hop doesn't use another full restore. And Hop's next Pokemon is his bulky Snorlax. So I go for Freeze Dry again, just in case we get the freeze again. And it doesn't really do that much damage, and we don't freeze, so Snorlax goes for a Body Slam, taking Sloth down to nearly half health. So I just try Freeze Dry again. And again it doesn't freeze, so another Heavy Slam takes Sloth down into the red. This time I decide to send back Sloth and call in Greed, and Psychics later, and Snorlax goes down. So I decide to send in Wrath again, as Hop sends in his Corviknight. And on my first turn of this I decide to use a Max Potion on Wrath, just to get him back to full health. And as I do that, Cover Knight goes for Drill Peck, which doesn't do too much to Wrath. So of course, one more Flare Blitz later. And the Corvid is down. And of course, Hop sends in the last Pokemon, Cinderace. And because I know he's going to Dynamax him, I decided to send in Gluttony now. So just after Cinderace goes big, he goes for Max Ooze on Gluttony, which does hardly any damage, but does raise Cinderace's special attack. So for now I decided to go for a Full Spore on Gluttony. That's the Cinderace's second Dynamax turn is Max Knuckle now, which only plinks Gluttony for a tiny amount. But again, Cinderace's physical attack has risen. So this time I decide to go big. And just as I do that, I use the Max Ooze, plinking Gluttony again. But one Max Geyser later, the rabbit blows up. And that is Hop taken down. Sorry, buddy. So after that match, Leon invites us both to dinner. We get harassed by reporters. And after waiting a few hours, Piers and Marnie help us out. And after flare blitzing our way through a few battles, we make our way into Rose Tower. And doing a load more fights, we bump into a very angry Oleana, and of course she wants to battle with us, so we oblige. And first of all she sends out her Frozlass. And of course we started with Wrath. As Frozlass goes for double team to raise her evasiveness, so we might not be able to hit her that much. But one bite, but two bites later, and she's down. And now I'm going to switch out Wrath into Sloth. As Oleana now sends out her Milotic, a real Tonky Pokemon. So the first move we go for is Freeze Dry, and good to know that we are faster than Milotic. When it sends her all the way down into the yellow, she uses Aqua Wing to try and heal herself every turn. So now that we know we can do more than half her health, one more Freeze Dry, and the Milotic is down. And after Sloth, I switch out into Greed. And Oleana's next Pokemon is the sneaky Salazzle, who is fire and poison. So that's why I sent in Greed, because I know that she's going to be weak to Psychic, so one Psychic later. And she's knocked down. Next is Sarina, who I managed to finish off with two Psychics. And now our last Pokemon is Garbodor, who I know she's going to Gigantamax again. So for now I use a Hyper Potion on Greed. And as I expect, a trash pile turned into an even bigger trash pile, who goes for Max Rockfall on her first go, which takes Greed all the way down into about half HP, and of course sets up a Sandstorm. So then after that I decide to make Greed big, and then one Max Mindstorm later, when we've literally and figuratively taken out the trash. I'm beaten Oleana. Sorry buddy, but you might want to do something about that Sandstorm. Now after doing all that we find Leon and Chairman Rose talking. And after doing a bit of talking we convince Leon to go back to the hotel to actually have some food. And after all of that nonsense we make our way back into the stadium. But as we make our way into the pitch, we have a surprise guest, which is Bede again, who's pretty much saying that he's sorry for everything he's done so far. But of course wants to have another battle with us, so we oblige. And the first one he sends out is his Mawile. And And I thought that this might be coming up, so I switched to Guile first. So for now we're just going to have to switch him back out. And send in Wrath. And of course the first move I used is Play Rough because we did have Guile out. Luckily I did swap. But unfortunately for you, Bede, one Flare Blitz later. And the Yokai Pokemon goes down. So now I actually properly send out Guile for this match. As Bede sends in his Gardevoir. Although we do have to still be a bit careful because Gardevoir is part Fairy now. But her first move is going to be Wish, so that means that she heals in a few more turns. And we use a Bite, which takes her down to nearly half health. Just before Gardevoir uses a cool animation, which is Calm Mind. It's a shame they took the animation out of Scarlet and Violet, to be fair. But of course another Bite sends Gardevoir nearly down into the red, but because of that Wish, it came true and most of her health gets restored. So of course she uses another Wish, using Floor Jest strategy, I see. One more Bite takes it down into the yellow. Just before Gardevoir goes for Dazzling Gleam on Guile, sending him down into the yellow. But one more Bite just about takes out Gardevoir. So this time I decide to switch out Guile for Lust. As Bede sends out his Galarian Rapidash. And she goes for Psycho Cut, which doesn't really do too much on Lust, so I go for Bite. Which again doesn't really do too much backwards. But a few more turns of this. And Galarian Rapidash finally goes down. And yes, I did have to switch into Sloth here because Guile's health got a bit low. Now of course Bede is onto his last Pokemon being Hatterene. The adorable Forest Witch Pokemon that she is. Who Bede goes to Gigantamax. But luckily though Freeze Dry does hit first. But Hatterene goes for Max Flare, which I didn't realise that she had. Turning the Sunlight Harsh and fainting Sloth. But because of that now I decide to switch it to Wrath. Do a Flare Blitz which does hit, and because of the harsh sunlight, Hatterene goes down. And that means that we've also beaten Bede as well. That was a good second match, buddy. So after quickly beating Nessa and B, and then when we're done with that and some more talking, we face off against Gym Leader Raihan again. And he first of all sends out his Torkoal, which is a bit of an issue because we have Sloth out first. So of course the first thing I do is swap out Greed, Sloth into Gluttony. Even though the sunlight is harsh, Gluttony can still take... Oh god. Even though sunlight's harsh, Torkoal decides to go for his first move being a Solar Beam, which of course he does typically because we swapped out Gluttony, but it doesn't really do too much to Gluttony, thankfully. So we decide to go for the Hydro Pump, and it does hit. Still one-shotting Torkoal even though the sun's out. And as Raihan's about to send out his Goodra, I switch out to Sloth again. But yeah, 2 Freeze Dries later and Goodra's down. And his next Pokemon is Turtonator. Also, I found out something interesting about Freeze Dry. Freeze Dry is an Ice type move that is super effective against any water types. So it doesn't matter what the other type is, you're still going to be weak to Freeze Dry. But despite that, I use Blizzard first on Turtonator. Oh, knocking him down into the red. But the Turtonator of course goes for Sunny Day, which doesn't really affect Sloth, but in case I had Gluttony out, it does. And the next move we use is Bite. Okay, taking a giant turtle down. And of course after that, his next Pokemon is Flygon, that we take down with a single Blizzard. And now because Raihan's going to switch out to a last Pokemon, which is going to Gigantamax, I switch it to Wrath. And after he goes big, he uses Rock Fall. which of course obliterates Wrath health, but it luckily does live on 20, so we go for a Flare Blitz, taking Duraludon down to about half, but unfortunately because of the recoil, Wrath goes down, so I decide to send in Sloth again, as he goes for Max Steel Spike on the Ice type, which leaves him on 15 health, as we manage to hit Duraludon with a Blizzard, which was a critical hit as well, and he explodes, winning us the match against Raihan. Sorry buddy, maybe in my bat only challenge you'll be more of an issue. And of course now that we've beaten Raihan, it's up to us to face Leon in the championship match. Chairman Rose comes up on the big screen interrupting us, saying that he's evil by the way, and that he was going to bring about the darkest day. So of course we have to go and stop him. So after going back to Slumbering Weald and Flare Blitzing his entire team, so after we stop his plans and make our way up to the top of the tower, Leon tries to catch the big bad Pokemon of the game, Eternatus, and a Pokeball, but of course it doesn't work. So after we have a crack at fighting him, Eternatus of course Gigantamaxes in a really cool sequence. And after finding out that we can't hit it with any other moves, after getting his help from the legendary wolves, we managed to take him down, so that means that we can catch him. And a Friend Ball. And after saying goodbye to Zacian and Zamazenta, and 3 days later we wake up in the hotel in Winden again. And after making our way into the stadium again, we're finally able to face off against champion Leon. So after he gets his preparations ready, he sends out his Aegislash, and of course we start off with Wrath. And the first move against Aegislash, of course, uses Flare Blitz to surprisingly take him out in one shot. And yet Wrath is hit by recoil damage. And of course straight after that we switch out Wrath into Lust again, as Leon goes through his Haxorus. Now we do have to be somewhat careful because Haxorus does have a Steel type move, as I found out from the last challenge I did, being Iron Tail, which he uses straight away to knock Lust down to 22 health. So of course Lust goes for Moonblast on the dragon, thankfully knocking him down in one shot. But just after that amazing effort we switch out Lust into Gluttony, as Leon sends out his Rhyperior, which I don't remember him having in Pokemon Shield. But one Hydro Pump later, he also goes down. So now after that effort we switch out Gluttony into Sloth, as Leon's next Pokemon is Dragapult, Ghost and Dragon, which is personally one of my favourite dragon types because it has a really cool design. And the first move he goes for is Flamethrower, which slots Sloth down into the yellow, but luckily though he hangs in there, and we go for Blizzard, which crits, so of course it knocks the cool dragon out. And Leon sends out his Rillaboom, who goes for Drum Beating, and is faster than Sloth is, so he gets knocked out. So of course we switch out to Wrath, who was going to go for Flare Blitz, but of course he goes for High Horsepower, knocking out my little fluffy fox. So this time I decide to send in Greed, who's faster, so we go for a Psychic, which knocks the Rillaboom down to about half, just before another Drum Beating, to knock Greed into the yellow, and to lower his speed. And that's enough for him to go for High Horsepower again, to knock him out. So this time I decide to send in Guile, as he uses Endeavour, which knocks us both to half health. So I decide to go for Tail Whip, which I hardly ever go for, which lowers Rillaboom's defense by 1 step. So he tries to go for Rillaboom again, but it doesn't do anything. So Guile goes for another Tail Whip, to lower Rillaboom's physical defense again. And of course Leon wants to go for another endeavour, which of course doesn't work so a third tail whip knocks him down to -3 in physical defense. But this time he actually rises up and goes for high horsepower, but it does hardly anything to Guile. So we go for bite, and because of all those tail whips, it crits, and it knocks out the monkey, finally. And now of course Leon sends in his most prized Pokemon, Charizard, who we know he is going to Gigantamax. So I use a revive on Sloth instead of trying to attack him. So after he Gigantamaxes and uses Max Overgrowth on Guile, you may be wondering what grass type move Charizard has. So now unfortunately I do need to heal up a bit more, so I send in Lust, who's on 25 health, as the Charizard is terrifyingly looking down on her. I use a Hyper Potion on Sloth. Charizard goes for Max Overgrowth again, instead of his usual fire move. Just about knocking Lust out. So this time I actually send in Sloth. As Charizard goes for Max Rockfall on him, ripping up a Sandstorm in the process, and knocking him out. But because that was his last Gigantamax turn, we send in Gluttony. He goes back down to normal size. We decide to Dynamax this time. But of course Charizard's faster and he uses an Air Slash on Gluttony, not really doing anything to him. So we go for Max Geyser to knock out Leon's Dragon in one shot. Winning us the match against champion Leon. Thank you, Leon, that was a really cool fight. So the question is, can we beat Pokemon Sword with only Eevees and Eeveelutions? Yes, we can do. And it was a really fun run, really interesting because I've never actually done a whole run with Eevees and Eeveelutions before, surprisingly. But yeah, that was a really cool one. I'm looking forward to the next challenge. That might not be next month though, that might be the month after considering what it is, and it might be a bit of a pain. But yeah, that was really cool. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and if you're new, even subscribe, that'd be amazing. And yeah, till next time, have a good one. Bye bye. That was awesome.